Welcome to episode 85 of Build Your House Yourself University by HiU. I'm Michelle Nelson, your host and fellow student, and together we'll learn the basics of home design and construction and demystify the building process so we can better understand our options and build quality dream homes with or without a general contractor. Last week, we talked about the pros and cons of the different types of pool construction. After you decide the type of pool structure you want, you'll have to decide what type of sanitation system you'll use to keep your pool free of bacteria, viruses, and algae. The most common systems are chlorine, saltwater, and ultraviolet light. Let's briefly go over each system and discuss the advantages of each. Let's start with chlorine pools. Chlorine pools are still the most common type of pool built today. Chlorine kills mold, mildew, bacteria, and other microorganisms living in the water. Chlorine makes water safe to swim in. Chlorine tablets are what's used to sanitize a chlorine pool, and those chlorine tablets are readily available, even in some stores that don't specialize in pool supplies. Chlorine pool water needs to be tested regularly with a kit. Chlorine tablets are added as necessary to balance the pH levels of the water. The tablets are added to either a pump unit, separate from the pool water, or to a floating disbursement device that dissolves the chlorine tablets over time in the water. Chlorine pools require more maintenance and more seasonal chemicals when compared to saltwater or UV systems. Water levels, and as a result, pH levels, will vary from week to week due to rainwater, backwashing, or water loss due to splashing or evaporation. Chlorine must be added regularly to balance those pH levels. Here are the advantages of a chlorine pool. Number 1, a chlorine pool will clear water up quicker than other systems. If there's an overgrowth of bacteria or if the pH levels are off, a chlorine system will clean and balance water within 24 to 48 hours. But it may take 3 to 5 days for a saltwater system to clear things up. Number 2, the initial cost of a chlorine pool is significantly lower than the setup cost for a saltwater or UV system. Initial setup for a saltwater pool, for example, is between $1,000 and $5,000, and that doesn't even include the construction of the actual pool. The major part of that expense comes from the purchase and installation of a saltwater generator, which is obviously not needed with a chlorine pool. And number 3, a chlorine pool typically uses a little less electricity than the amount of electricity needed for a saltwater pool system. Now, let's talk more about saltwater pools. Lots of people think that a saltwater pool is better than a chlorine pool, but in a way of speaking, a saltwater pool is a chlorine pool. The chemical name for salt is sodium chloride. Remember that from chemistry class? In a saltwater pool, sodium chloride is electrically converted into chlorine. Although a significant amount of salt is dissolved in the pool water to clean and sanitize a saltwater pool, the water won't taste really salty like ocean water does. In fact, saltwater pools have about 1/10 the salt of ocean water. In a saltwater pool, you have to maintain consistent salt-to-water ratios and pH levels by adding salt or water to the pool on a weekly or monthly basis. Factors like how much rain has gotten into the pool or the amount of water that's been lost due to splashing or evaporation will affect the salt-to-water ratio. The initial upfront cost of a saltwater pool is much greater than the upfront cost of a chlorine pool, which we just discussed. But over time, the cost goes down significantly because it's mainly water in the pool that's lost or gained, not salt. The amount of salt in the pool remains relatively stable, so only small amounts have to be added to maintain the salt-to-water ratio. That brings me to the first advantage of saltwater pools. Number 1, the saltwater pool is low in maintenance and low in overall maintenance cost. Within the first few years of owning your saltwater pool, you'll get back that extra cost you paid for installation of the saltwater generator. You'll get that cost back in lower maintenance and chemical costs. The most up-to-date saltwater systems can maintain clear, clean water for up to 2 weeks without intervention. In contrast, a typical chlorine pool requires weekly maintenance with chlorine tablets added regularly. A chlorine pool will also need periodic shocks of more concentrated chlorine to keep algae from growing and to maintain consistent chlorine levels. This involves dissolving chlorine in a bucket of water and adding it slowly to the pool. A saltwater pool needs this shock treatment usually only after a very heavy rain or when algae begins to grow, which starts to turn the water green. And number 2, salt water is less irritating than water from a chlorine pool. This is probably the greatest advantage of a saltwater system over a chlorine system. Although saltwater systems produce chlorine for sanitation, the levels are low enough that the chlorine in the saltwater pool usually won't hurt or sting your eyes, irritate your skin, damage your hair, fade your swimsuit, or cause headaches. Plus, the chlorine produced from salt is less harsh than the chlorine from chemical tablets. A saltwater system is meant to provide the same benefits of a chlorine pool, but without all the irritating chemicals. Last on our list this week is an ultraviolet light sanitation system. Ultraviolet or UV pool sanitizers use a non-chemical system of invisible UV light rays to sanitize water. The ultraviolet pool sanitizers emit a high-intensity light ray that destroys algae, bacteria, and viruses, as well as some chlorine-resistant parasites. UV systems also eliminate the formation of chlorine byproducts. About 80% of new water parks and aquatic facilities use ultraviolet sanitation systems. But here's the catch. According to waterandhealth.org, alternative pool sanitizers, including UV systems, still require a secondary level of protection, most often provided by chlorine-based sanitizers. Although UV systems effectively kill many germs, the system must be used along with chlorine for residential pool sanitation. That's because UV systems work by moving the pool water past the UV lamps, where germs are destroyed. In residential pools, unlike many water parks, water doesn't circulate quickly enough around to the UV light. That means it takes too long for germs in the distant part of the pool to get exposed to the ultraviolet system. During that lag time, bacteria, algae, viruses, and parasites can grow and multiply. So adding germ-killing chlorine to a UV system is ideal for residential pools. But you should still consider a UV sanitizer because it should help cut down on the amount of chlorine needed for your pool. UV systems are expensive, ranging from $500 to $2,000, but they're still relatively new on the market, so hopefully the prices will fall over time. The UV system itself is super low maintenance, typically needing only a yearly UV lamp replacement and cleaning of the quartz tube that's inside the UV unit. But remember, you'll also need to add chlorine regularly for optimal sanitation. Let's end with a quick tip about getting the best price for your swimming pool installation. Now, you probably know this, but get several bids. And have your pool installed in the late summer, early fall, or very early spring, when the pool business is typically slow. You might even see if you can get a winter special if you live in an area where the ground doesn't typically freeze. Cost, maintenance, and health concerns are the main reasons to choose one sanitation system over another. When making your decision, be realistic about your budget, your sensitivity to chlorine, and your willingness to perform or pay for maintenance. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you learned as much as I did. Let's do it again next week. Come back for the next episode of Build Your House Yourself University by HiU. Please remember that the purpose of this podcast is simply to educate and inform. It's not a substitute for professional advice. The information that you hear is based only on the opinions, research, and experiences of my guests and myself. That information might be incomplete, it's subject to change, and it may not apply to your project. In addition, building codes and requirements vary from region to region, so always consult a professional about specific recommendations for your home.